The chamber fell silent. High Arbitrator Velshawn stood at the center platform, his three eyes scanning the assembled representatives from across the galaxy. His voice echoed through the massive hall when he finally spoke. The vote is final. Humanity is expelled from the Galactic Coalition, effective immediately. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the observation deck of the trade station, watching the announcement on a flickering screen. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago. Around him, other humans stopped their work and listened. Nobody said much. A few nodded quietly. Others just stared at their hands. The charges against humanity scrolled across every screen in Coalition space. Too aggressive in business. Too reckless when exploring unknown space. Too stubborn during peace talks. Too emotional and therefore too unpredictable. The list went on for pages. Jake turned off the screen and looked out at the stars. He had spent 15 years hauling cargo between worlds. He knew every dock worker by name at Celestial Harbor. He brought toys for their kids. He remembered birthdays. That was over now. 60 days, his first officer said quietly. They're giving us 60 days to leave. Jake stood up and stretched. Better start packing then. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. At the Xyloth Medical Complex, Dr. Amy Richardson received the news during her morning rounds. She was treating a Melkari child with a rare blood disease. The child's parents looked at her with worry in their large, dark eyes. "Will you have to go?" the mother asked. Amy smiled gently. "Yes. But don't worry. I'll train someone to take over. Your daughter will be fine." She spent the next week working double shifts. She wrote down everything she knew about the treatment. Every detail. Every small adjustment she made based on how the patient looked or acted. She knew the replacement doctor was smart and capable. She just hoped all the small human instincts she used could fit into words on a page. Lieutenant Kyle Chen stood on the wall of the defense station on Talos 9, looking out at the wilderness beyond. He had spent 5 years keeping this frontier world safe. The Zephron officer, who would replace him, stood beside him, taking notes. "The sensors will tell you if anyone approaches," Kyle explained. "But don't just trust the sensors. The raiders out here are smart. They know how to fool machines. How do you catch them then?" the Zephron asked. Kyle shrugged. "I just think about what I would do if I wanted to sneak past. Then, I watch for that." The Zephron wrote this down, though his face showed confusion. His people followed rules and protocols. The idea of thinking like a criminal seemed strange to him. At the Interspecies Academy, Professor Danny Wright was cleaning out his office. Students kept stopping by to say goodbye. A young Cathari female lingered at the door. "Professor Wright, I don't understand. Why are you all leaving so quietly? Humans always seemed so loud about everything." Danny packed another box of books. "Being loud, when you're angry, doesn't help anyone. Besides, the council made their choice. We respect that. But you disagree with it." "Of course we do. But making a scene won't change anything. It'll just make everyone uncomfortable." He smiled at her. "Sometimes, the best thing you can do is leave with dignity." The student left looking more confused than before. All across Coalition space, humans began their quiet exodus. They transferred their duties. They said goodbye to friends. They apologized for any trouble their leaving might cause. They left instruction manuals that were almost obsessively detailed. They hugged their alien colleagues and promised to stay in touch. The other species watched this calm departure with growing unease. They had expected anger. They had prepared for protests, maybe even violence. Humans were emotional creatures. After all, that was one of the problems. But this peaceful acceptance felt wrong somehow. Like the humans knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. Admiral Lisa Grant commanded the last human vessel to leave Coalition space. The New Dawn was a colony ship, massive and slow. As it crossed the border, every human ship in the sector fell in line behind it. A fleet of cargo haulers, medical ships, exploration vessels, and personal shuttles. Hundreds of them. Lisa stood on her bridge and watched the border beacon fade behind them. Her crew was silent. After 300 years of being part of something bigger, humanity was alone again. Set course for Earth, she said quietly. The great gates at the border closed behind them. In the Coalition Council chamber, representatives from 1,000 worlds relaxed. High Arbitrator Velshon made a short speech about difficult decisions and bright futures. The Cathari began calculating profits from the human trade routes they would inherit. The Zephrons planned their new defensive strategies. The Melkari Medical Corps discussed expanding into human facilities. Nobody noticed the small things yet. The water recycler on Station Vega 7 that ran a bit rougher without Danny Wright's daily adjustments. The trade relationships that were built on handshakes and trust instead of contracts. The sick patients who would need treatments that weren't in any official database. In human space, Jake Morrison docked his ship at a station he hadn't seen in 20 years. Earth. Station Alpha. It looked different. Older. But when he stepped off his ship, the gravity felt right in a way it never had anywhere else. Amy Richardson met her family at the spaceport. Her sister hugged her tight and asked if she was okay. "I'm fine," Amy said. And she meant it. She was sad, yes. Disappointed. But also something else. Something that felt almost like relief. Kyle Chen reported to Earth Defense Command and was surprised to find he wasn't alone. Hundreds of other peacekeepers had come home. They shared stories over drinks. They laughed about the strange aliens they'd protected. They made plans. The galaxy thought it had removed a problem. The humans settled back into their small corner of space and got to work. Time would tell who had made the mistake. 3 months passed like a pleasant dream for the Galactic Coalition. The council members congratulated themselves during their meetings. They had made a hard choice. Yes. But the right one. The galaxy was more orderly now. More predictable. High Arbitrator Velshon reviewed the reports with satisfaction. Human territories had been redistributed. Their trade routes were being managed by proper businesses. Their defense stations were manned by trained military personnel. Everything was running according to protocol. Then Station Vega 7 sent out a distress signal. The station master, a nervous Trell named Koss, stood in the control room watching alarms flash across every screen. The water recycling system had crashed. 12,000 residents had maybe 4 days of water left. "How did this happen?" Koss demanded. "The system passed inspection just last month." The chief engineer pulled up the maintenance logs. "According to this, everything is within normal parameters. The system should be working fine. Thanks for watching." "But it isn't," Koss said, stating the obvious. They evacuated the station. It took 3 days and cost the coalition millions in emergency response. Later, a repair team found the problem, a design flaw in the original system, something that should have caused failures years ago. In the notes, they found a reference to Wright's Manual Compensation Protocol, AT. They searched the database. Danny Wright had been the human technician assigned to Vega 7. He had discovered the flaw within a week of arriving. Instead of reporting it and waiting months for official repairs, he had simply fixed it himself. Every day. For 6 years. A 5-minute adjustment that he never bothered to mention because it seemed too small to matter. The new engineer stared at the notes. He did this every single day. For 6 years? Humans were odd about responsibility, his supervisor said. At the Xyloth Medical Complex, Dr. Shenva was losing patience. The crimson fever outbreak had started small, but it was spreading. She followed every treatment protocol exactly. The mortality rate was 30%. She pulled up the records from the previous outbreak. 5 years ago, Dr. Amy Richardson had treated it. Her mortality rate was 9%. Shenva read through Amy's notes carefully. The human doctor had combined treatments from 3 different medical traditions. She had mixed Melkari antiviral compounds with Cathari immune boosters and added something from human medicine called supportive care. The official protocols say these treatments shouldn't be combined, Shenva said to her colleague. Then how did the human make it work? Shenva read further. Amy's notes were detailed. But they kept mentioning things like, patient seemed responsive, and adjusted dosage, based on energy levels, and just had a feeling, we should try this. Feelings. Humans always trusted their feelings. Shenva tried to follow the notes exactly. But without Amy's instinct for reading patients, the results were poor. 43 people died, who might have lived. On Talus 9, the raiders came at dawn. They hit 3 settlements, before the defense grid even registered the attack. The Zephyron military responded within minutes, establishing a defensive perimeter exactly as their training prescribed. The raiders scattered and regrouped. They attacked from unexpected angles. They used tactics that made no strategic sense. They were messy and chaotic, and completely unpredictable. Commander Zeth watched in frustration as his perfectly organized defense fell apart. Why don't they follow any logical pattern? His second officer checked the historical records. According to this, Lieutenant Kyle Chen dealt with 17 raid attempts in 5 years. He stopped all of them. How? The officer read the report and frowned. It says he predicted their movements using something called intuition, and he often violated standard defensive protocols to counterattack in unexpected ways. That's not proper military procedure, Zeth said. No, sir. 6 settlements were damaged before the raiders withdrew. No one died. But the Zephyron forces looked foolish. Worse, the raiders would be back. They knew the defenses were predictable now. At the Central Diplomatic Center, Counselor Mira sat in her office surrounded by reports of failed negotiations. Border disputes, that should have been simple to resolve, had escalated into shouting matches. Trade disagreements that once would have been settled in days were dragging on for months. She compared the current success rate to previous years. The difference was staggering. What changed? She asked her assistant. The assistant, a young, peaceful one named Soren, hesitated. The only major change in the past year was the departure of human mediators. Humans weren't trained diplomats. Most of them were just merchants or engineers who happened to be present during disputes. Yes, counselor. But they were very effective. Mira pulled up the records. Humans had been involved in 68% of successful dispute resolutions over the past decade. She read through the transcripts. The humans rarely followed proper diplomatic procedure. They interrupted people. They made jokes during serious discussions. They sometimes ignored the facts entirely and focused on feelings. It should not have worked. But it did. They could understand both sides simultaneously. Soren offered. Even when the positions were completely contradictory, they would just hold both truths in their minds and find a middle path. That's not logical, Mira said. No, counselor. But logic doesn't solve every problem. The reports kept coming. Small problems at first. A factory that produced fewer goods because the human supervisors' motivation techniques weren't in any management manual. A research team that stopped innovating because their human colleague wasn't there to ask stupid questions anymore. A deep space station where crew morale had dropped for reasons nobody could explain. The Kothari trade minister presented his quarterly report to the council. The Outer Rim trade network profits were down 40%. This is unacceptable, High Arbitrator Velshan said. The human merchants were operating on tiny margins. We should be seeing increased profits. The trade minister shifted uncomfortably. The humans had relationships with the Rim colonies. Personal connections built over years. They extended credit during hard times. They took losses to preserve partnerships. Our merchants are following standard business practices, but the colonies are refusing to trade at all. Then we'll enforce the trade agreements. The agreements were never written down, arbitrator. They were based on trust. Trust. That uniquely human obsession. In the outer colonies, a merchant named Tev refused to sell his grain to the Kothari trader. Jake Morrison gave me credit when my crops failed. He lost money to keep my family alive. I'll wait until the humans come back. They're not coming back, the Kothari said. Then I'll wait anyway. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. The coalition had inherited humanity's systems and structures, but they had lost something invisible, something the humans had woven into every interaction: the personal touch, the willingness to bend rules, the strange ability to care about strangers. In the council chamber, representatives began to murmur. 3 months ago, removing humanity had seemed wise. Now, cracks were showing everywhere they looked. High Arbitrator Velshan silenced the growing discussion. These are temporary adjustment issues. The galaxy functioned for millions of years before humans joined us. It will function fine without them. But in the back of his mind, a small doubt began to grow. 8 months after the humans left, the problem stopped being small. The Outer Rim trade network didn't just decline. It collapsed completely. 17 colonies declared trade independence within the same week. The Kothari merchants sent urgent reports to the council, but none of them could explain exactly what had gone wrong. Trade Minister Voss stood before the council, his voice strained. The colonies are refusing all standard contracts. They say the terms are unfair. Dumb. The terms are identical to what the humans offered, High Arbitrator Velshan pointed out. Yes, Arbitrator. But when humans offered them, the colonies accepted. Velshan's center eye narrowed. Why? Voss pulled up a recording. A colony leader named Shan spoke directly to the camera. Jake Morrison came to my world when we had nothing. He sold us equipment at cost. He waited 3 years for payment. When our harvest failed, he brought us food and told us to pay him back whenever we could. That's not in any contract. That's friendship. Your traders want payment now and profit margins later. We'd rather starve. The council chamber fell quiet. They had calculated economics. They had not calculated trust. On the other side of the galaxy, Explorer Fleet Designation 447 detected an anomaly near the Helix Nebula. Fleet Admiral Corthan studied the readings carefully. The anomaly was unusual, but not immediately dangerous. Protocol was clear. Mark it for study and continue the survey mission. Mark it and move on, Corthan ordered. 3 days later, the anomaly collapsed. A gravity well formed, sudden and violent. 2 inhabited systems were in its path. 4 billion lives. Corthan ordered immediate evacuation. His fleet followed every protocol. They established safe zones. They coordinated with local governments. They did everything right. 46 million people died anyway. The evacuation ships were too slow. The safe zones weren't quite safe enough. The local governments panicked and made poor decisions. Later, a junior science officer named Kess reviewed the data. She found something strange. 10 years ago, a human exploration team had encountered a similar anomaly. Captain Lisa Grant had noticed the early signs and evacuated 2 systems before the collapse happened. 0 casualties. Kess read Grant's report. The human captain had violated protocol. She had ordered evacuation based on a hunch before any danger was confirmed. She had used unorthodox maneuvers to speed up the rescue. She had personally piloted a shuttle into dangerous space to grab stragglers. She broke 17 regulations, Kess said aloud. She also saved 4 billion lives, her supervisor replied quietly. At the Interspecies Academy, Professor Thane Lore faced his class of brilliant students. They could memorize any text. They could solve complex equations. They could master any technical skill he taught them. They couldn't innovate. I need you to design a new type of engine, Thane Lore said. Something faster than current models. The students worked for weeks. They came back with designs that were technically perfect. They were also identical to existing engines with minor variations. Safe, predictable, useless. Thane Lore remembered the human students he had taught. They had been average at memorization. mediocre at following instructions. But when asked to innovate, they came back with crazy ideas. Engines that shouldn't work but somehow did. Designs that violated basic principles but achieved impossible results. Think outside the box, Thanelore told his current students. They stared at him. What box, Professor? He realized the problem. Humans had grown up being told no. Their ideas were too wild. Their methods were too risky. They learned to expect rejection. So when they finally got permission to be creative, they went wild with it. These students had never been told no. They had never learned to push boundaries because they didn't know boundaries existed. The Coalition Science Council gathered for an emergency meeting. The head researcher, a Melkari named Veth, presented the data everyone had been dreading. Innovation has dropped 62% since the human departure. The council members looked at each other. One representative spoke up. Humans weren't particularly intelligent compared to other species. How could they be responsible for so much innovation? Veth pulled up research records. In the past century, 73% of breakthrough discoveries had humans on the research team. I analyzed their contributions. They didn't solve the problems. They asked different questions. She showed examples. A Cathari scientist had spent years trying to improve shield technology using advanced mathematics. A human technician named Greg asked, "What if we tried making it weaker in some spots?" The question made no sense, but it led to adaptive shielding that was twice as effective. A Zephron medical team tried to cure a disease by targeting it directly. A human doctor named Beth asked, "What if we help the body fight it instead of fighting it ourselves?" Immunotherapy became the standard treatment. They asked stupid questions. Another council member said. Yes, Veth agreed. Questions so stupid that no one else thought to ask them. And sometimes, stupid questions have brilliant answers. Border incidents increased by 400%. The Drax war fleets, peaceful for 2 decades, began testing coalition defenses. Their commander, a massive being named Zor, met with his officers. "Why now?" one of them asked. "Why not attack before?" Zor laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. "Because the humans were here before. You couldn't bribe them. You couldn't threaten them. You couldn't reason with them to look away from injustice. They were annoying. But now they're gone." The Drax fleet struck a border station. Coalition forces responded. The battle was efficient and organized. The coalition won easily, but more Drax ships kept coming. They knew the coalition would win each battle. They also knew the coalition would follow rules. Rules could be exploited. The humans had never followed rules consistently. That had made them unpredictable, dangerous. The Drax had left them alone. Dr. Velma, from the Melkari Medical Corps, discovered something that frightened her. Suicide rates across coalition space had increased 15%. Mental health facilities were overwhelmed. She studied the data, looking for causes. Disease? No. Economic problems? Some, but not enough to explain the increase. War? The conflicts were minor. Then she found a correlation. The increase was highest in populations that had worked closely with humans. She interviewed a Trell factory worker who had attempted suicide. "Why?" she asked gently. "It just feels pointless now," he said. "When the humans were here, they made me feel like my work mattered. They told jokes. They asked about my family. They acted like I was important. Now I'm just worker number 743. I do the same job, but it feels empty." Velma had dismissed human concepts like morale as emotional weakness. The data was proving her wrong. Humans had made their friends feel valued, feel hopeful, feel like they mattered. No one had measured it because it seemed too soft to quantify. Now its absence left a hole. High Arbitrator Velshon read report after report, each one worse than the last. The galaxy wasn't ending, but it was diminishing, growing smaller, less vibrant, less alive. He called an emergency council session. The chamber filled quickly. Every representative had their own horror story to share. The trade minister spoke of economic collapse. The military commander spoke of security failures. The science director spoke of innovation drought. The medical chief spoke of rising despair. "We made a mistake," Junior Arbiter Kesslin said quietly. The chamber erupted. Half the representatives shouted in agreement. The other half defended the decision. Velshawn called for order. "The question before us is simple," he said. "Do we invite the humans back?" The debate lasted through the night. Pride fought against necessity. Principle clashed with pragmatism. Finally, as dawn broke over the council world, the vote was called. The motion to invite humanity back passed, 847 to 3. Velshawn looked at the results and felt both relief and dread. They had made the right choice. But would the humans accept? The message took 2 weeks to reach Earth. High Arbitrator Velshawn had written it himself, spending 3 days choosing every word. It was beautiful, humble, complete. To the people of Earth and all human colonies, it began. We were wrong. The message acknowledged every mistake. It explained how the galaxy had suffered without humanity. It offered reparations for the expulsion. It proposed a new treaty, one that would make humans equal partners, not just members. "We need you," it concluded. "Please come home." Ambassador Kate Sullivan received the transmission at the Human Assembly Building in Geneva. She was a middle-aged woman, with gray starting to show in her dark hair. She had been a trade negotiator in coalition space before the expulsion. She read the message 3 times. Then she smiled. "Thank you," she told the alien messenger who had delivered it. "I'll bring this to the assembly. We'll give you an answer soon." The messenger, a young Cathari diplomat, felt relief. How soon? 5. A few weeks, probably. These things take time. The messenger returned to his ship and sent the report. The council would be pleased. The humans were considering it. What the messenger didn't see was the transformation happening across human space. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new ship. Not the old cargo hauler he had used in coalition space. This one was faster, sleeker. Built with a combination of human engineering and alien principles they had learned over 3 centuries. "How's she running?" he asked his engineer. 40% faster than the old models, Greg replied. He was the same Greg who had asked the stupid question about shields. "We combined Trell efficiency with Cathari power systems and added our own touch." Our own touch meant the engines broke about a dozen safety regulations that the Coalition considered sacred. They also worked better than anything the galaxy had seen. Jake grinned. "Take us to the outer colonies. I've got some friends who need supplies." At the New Geneva Medical Center, Dr. Amy Richardson worked in a lab that would have made Coalition regulators faint. She was combining treatments from 12 different species, mixing compounds that official protocols said should never touch. "This is insane," her assistant said, watching the mixture bubble. "Probably," Amy agreed. "Hand me the Zephron catalyst." The treatment she was developing would cure crimson fever in 3 days instead of 3 weeks. It would also be completely illegal in Coalition space. Too many untested combinations. Too much risk. But Amy wasn't in Coalition space anymore. She could take risks. Kyle Chen stood in Earth Defense Command, looking at a star map covered in orange markers. Each marker represented a new world that human explorers had found in the past 8 months. 17 habitable planets, Admiral Lisa Grant said, standing beside him. 4 new civilizations contacted. Not bad for 8 months of work. Coalition protocol would have taken 8 years just to get approval for the expeditions, Kyle replied. Lisa nodded. "We're not bound by their protocols anymore. Our explorers can actually explore." The new civilizations had been surprised by humanity's approach. Humans didn't arrive with rulebooks and membership applications. They arrived with curiosity and friendship. They shared technology freely. They asked questions. They listened. One of the new species, the Vrex, had been particularly amused. "You're very different from the coalition representatives we met," their leader had said. "How so?" the human explorer had asked. "You seem to actually like us." The human economy was thriving. Without coalition regulations, human merchants had returned to the old ways. Handshake deals, trust-based credit, long-term relationships over short-term profit. The Outer Rim colonies that had refused to trade with the coalition were happy to trade with independent humans. The deals were the same as before. Jake Morrison still extended credit. He still took losses to help friends. The difference was now he answered to no trade authority. He did it because he wanted to. At the Interspecies Academy, former Professor Danny Wright ran a private engineering school. His students were human kids who had grown up in coalition space and come home. They understood alien technology. They also understood human creativity. "Design me an engine," Danny told his class. They came back with designs that were beautiful, impossible, and probably dangerous. Exactly what he wanted. "Now make them safe enough that they won't kill anyone," he added. The students revised their designs. Some would work, some would fail. All of them pushed boundaries. This was what the coalition had lost. Not human intelligence, not human strength. Human willingness to try things that might not work, to fail spectacularly, to get back up and try again. 6 weeks after the coalition's invitation, Ambassador Kate Sullivan drafted humanity's response. She showed it to the assembly first. "This will surprise them," one delegate said. "Good," Kate replied. "We've always been good at surprises." She sent the message. It reached the council chamber during a regular session. High Arbitrator Velshawn interrupted the discussion to read it aloud. The response was polite. It was warm. It thanked the coalition for the opportunity and the lessons learned. Then it got to the important part. After careful consideration, humanity must respectfully decline the invitation to rejoin the coalition. The chamber went silent. Velshawn kept reading. "Instead, we propose independent partnership. We will trade freely with coalition members. We will share medical knowledge. We will assist during emergencies. We welcome all aliens to visit human space. But we will not rejoin the coalition. We will not place ourselves under council authority again." The message continued. "We love you all. We learned so much during our time as members. But we've grown. We need to follow our own path now. We hope you understand." It ended with a human phrase that translated poorly. "We've grown." In some languages, it became, "We've changed." In others, "We've matured." None of the translations quite captured the meaning. Velshawn set down the message. Around him, council members sat in stunned silence. "They said no," someone whispered. "They said no," Velshawn confirmed. The Cathari trade minister stood. "This is unacceptable. We offer them everything they want, and they refuse? They don't want what we're offering," Junior Arbiter Kesslin said softly. "They want freedom. They had freedom as members." "No," Kesslin said. "They had restrictions, rules, protocols. They had to fit themselves into our systems. Now, they're building their own systems. Better ones, apparently." Representative Zor of the Drax laughed. That grinding rock sound. "I told you all. You can't control humans. They do what they want. That's what makes them dangerous and valuable." Over the following weeks, the reality of humanity's refusal sank in. They weren't angry. They weren't punishing the coalition. They had simply moved on. Human traders started appearing at coalition stations again, but as independents. They followed their own rules. They charged fair prices, but not standardized ones. They extended credit based on trust. Human doctors offered to work in coalition hospitals. As contractors, they would use their methods, not coalition protocols. Take it or leave it. Human peacekeepers showed up at border stations. As hired security, they would protect coalition space. But they would choose which missions to accept. The galaxy had to adjust. For millions of years, species had two choices: join the coalition or stay isolated. Humans had created a third option: be part of the galactic community without being part of the government. Other species started to notice. Small, independent worlds that had always felt pressured to join the coalition suddenly had an alternative. They could partner with humans, trade freely, share knowledge, keep their independence. The coalition found itself competing for members instead of accepting applications. High Arbitrator Velshawn met with Kate Sullivan privately, months after the refusal. They sat in a quiet garden on a neutral station. "I understand why you said no," he told her. "I'm not sure I agree with it, but I understand." Kate smiled. "We're not rejecting you. We're just choosing a different relationship. You're setting an example. Other species will follow. Maybe that's not a bad thing." Velshawn was quiet for a long moment. "We thought we needed to control you, to benefit from you, and now you know different." "Yes. Now we know that humanity's greatest gift isn't something we can regulate or manage. It's the chaos, the unpredictability, the refusal to fit neatly into boxes." Kate raised her glass. "To chaos." Velshawn touched his glass to hers. "To chaos." Across the galaxy, a new era was beginning. 20 years passed, like water flowing around a stone. The galaxy adjusted to the new reality. Humanity didn't rejoin the coalition, but they became an essential part of galactic life anyway. Human traders filled coalition markets, but they weren't bound by trade laws. They made their own deals. The coalition tried to regulate them at first, then gave up. The humans simply went elsewhere when faced with too many rules. And wherever humans went, business followed. Human doctors worked in hospitals across coalition space. They taught their mixing of treatments and their reliance on instinct. Some alien doctors embraced it. Others stuck to protocols. Patients learned to ask if their doctor had trained with humans. Human peacekeepers defended borders and settled disputes. They were expensive to hire, but worth every credit. They solved problems that regular forces couldn't touch. The chaotic raiders that had plagued the frontier were gone, chased away by defenders who could think like them. The Interspecies Academy added a new department: creative problem solving. It was taught entirely by humans. The students learned to ask stupid questions, to break rules on purpose, to fail and try again. Graduation rates dropped. Innovation rates soared. High Arbitrator Velshawn retired after 15 years. His replacement, Junior Arbiter Kesslin, took a different approach to leadership. She believed the coalition should learn from its mistakes, should become more flexible, more open to chaos. Some council members resisted. Others embraced the change. The debates were loud and messy. Very human, people said, and they meant it as a compliment. On the independent human vessel Wandering Star, Captain Chloe Martinez studied the readings from her sensors. She was young, only 26, but already a veteran explorer. She had found 3 new worlds in the past year. "Captain, we're detecting signals from an unknown civilization," her communications officer said. "Grid coordinates match the outer frontier, just beyond coalition space." Chloe leaned forward. This was what she lived for. "Let's go say hello." The Wandering Star dropped into orbit around a blue-green planet. The civilization below was young, just developing spaceflight. They were also aggressive, unpredictable, and very emotional. They reminded Chloe of humans. First contact went badly. The aliens were suspicious. They threatened the human ship. They demanded to know why strangers were in their space. Chloe handled it with typical human diplomacy. She was honest, friendly, and completely unbothered by their hostility. "We're explorers," she told them. "We wanted to meet you. If you want us to leave, we'll leave." The alien leader, a being named Throck, was confused. "You don't want to conquer us? Why would we do that? That's what powerful species do." Chloe laughed. "We're not that powerful. And even if we were, Conquering people seems like a lot of work. We'd rather be friends. Over the next week, Chloe and her crew shared information with the aliens. They explained the galaxy, the coalition, the independent human worlds, the different ways to be part of galactic civilization. The coalition will contact you soon, Chloe explained. They'll offer you membership, rules, protocols, protection. It's not a bad deal. But you didn't take it, Throck observed. We did, for 300 years. Then we left. We wanted to do things our own way. Crass. Prass. Crass. What should we do? Chloe smiled. I can't tell you that. But I can tell you what I think. The galaxy needs more species like you. Aggressive, emotional, unpredictable. The coalition has 1,000 species that follow rules perfectly. It only has one species that breaks them creatively. You could be the second. Throck considered this. The coalition message will tell us to join them and become civilized. In Tom. Oh no. Probably. What will you tell us? Chloe stood and looked out at the stars. I'll tell you to stay exactly who you are. The galaxy needs more chaos, not less. She left Throck with information packets. History of the coalition. Details about human independence. Trade routes. Contact information. Everything they needed to make their own choice. As the wandering star jumped to the next system, Chloe's first officer asked, "Do you think they'll join the coalition?" "Maybe," Chloe said. "Maybe not. Either way, they'll know there are options." Back on the alien planet, Throck received 2 messages within the same day. The coalition's was formal and impressive. Join us. Follow our rules. Become part of something greater. We'll teach you to be civilized. The human message was simpler. Stay who you are. The galaxy needs you just as you are. Call us if you need anything. We're here. Throck called a council of his people. They debated for days. Finally, they sent their response. To the coalition. Thank you for the invitation. We need time to consider. To the humans, tell us more about this independence thing. In the coalition council chamber, Kesslin read the reports about the new species. They were very much like humans had been. Aggressive in trade, reckless in exploration, stubborn in negotiations, emotional and unpredictable. Some council members wanted to reject them immediately. We don't need another humanity, they argued. That's exactly what we need, Kesslin replied. The galaxy is too orderly, too predictable. We need species that challenge us, that make us uncomfortable, that force us to grow. The debate was fierce. The vote was close. The new species could join but would have more freedom than traditional members. A compromise between control and chaos. Kesslin sent the message personally. She also added a note. We learned from humanity that sometimes the most valuable members are the ones who don't quite fit. Welcome to the galaxy. We're glad you're here, exactly as you are. On Earth, Ambassador Kate Sullivan read the news about the new species. She was older now. Her hair completely gray. She had watched the galaxy change over 2 decades. Watched it become more flexible, more accepting of difference. We did that, her assistant said. By leaving, we taught them to value what we were. Kate nodded. Sometimes the best way to help someone is to let them miss you. In human space, life thrived. The colonies were prosperous. Trade was booming. Innovation flowed freely. Humans still worked with the coalition, but on their own terms. They were partners, not members. Friends, not followers. Jake Morrison retired from trading and opened a restaurant on Earth. He served food from 100 different worlds. The place was always packed. People came for the food, but they stayed for the stories. Jake had 1 million of them. Amy Richardson ran the New Geneva Medical Center. She trained young doctors in the art of creative medicine. Learn the protocols, she told them. Then learn when to break them. Kyle Chen commanded the Human Defense Forces. They were small, but effective. When the Dracs tested coalition borders, they hired human defenders. When pirates attacked trade routes, they called Kyle. He never failed to show up. Lisa Grant became the governor of New Horizons, the first colony humans had founded after leaving coalition space. It was a beautiful world, full of species from across the galaxy. Humans, aliens who had left the coalition, independent traders, artists, explorers. All of them drawn to a place where rules were flexible and creativity was valued. Danny Wright published a book, The Art of Thinking Sideways. It became required reading at the Interspecies Academy. Students complained that it made their brains hurt. Their professors smiled and said that was the point. Across the galaxy, a new understanding took root. Unity didn't require uniformity. A galactic community could include species that didn't fit the mold. The outliers, the rebels, the chaotic ones weren't problems to be solved. They were gifts to be treasured. High Arbitrator Kesslin spoke at the Council anniversary celebration, 2 decades after humanity's expulsion. 20 years ago, we made a mistake, she said. We expelled humanity because they didn't fit our vision of what members should be. We wanted order, and they brought chaos. We wanted predictability, and they brought surprises. She paused, looking around the chamber. But in their absence, we learned something crucial. The chaos was the point. The surprises were the gift. The friction they created forced us to grow. When they left softly, their absence spoke loudly. It taught us that sometimes the most valuable members of a society are the ones who refuse to conform. The chamber was silent. Every representative remembered the dark months after humanity's departure. The slow unraveling. The desperate realization of what they had lost. Humanity chose not to return to us, Kesslin continued. They chose independence instead. It was the right choice. They're happier now. Freer. More fully themselves. And we're better for having them as partners instead of members. She raised her hand in the human gesture of respect. To humanity. Who taught us that leaving can be the greatest gift? That absence can speak louder than presence. That sometimes the best way to be part of something is to stand slightly outside it. Around the galaxy, humans and aliens alike paused in their work to watch the broadcast. They raised glasses and cups and appendages. To humanity. To chaos. To the beautiful, frustrating gift of being different. On the wandering star, Chloe Martinez smiled and turned to her crew. Set course for the next unknown system. Let's see who else is out there. The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying humanity's message to the stars. Stay who you are. The galaxy needs you. Don't let anyone make you small. Behind them, the coalition and humanity continued their dance. Not joined, but connected. Not unified, but partnered. Different approaches to the same goal, making the galaxy a place where all kinds of beings could thrive. The humans had left softly, without anger or violence. Their absence had spoken loudly, teaching lessons the galaxy desperately needed. And their return, not as members but as independent partners, spoke loudest of all. Some species aren't meant to follow. Some species are meant to dance to their own music. And the galaxy is richer when they're allowed to do exactly that.